Lisa. Thanks for interviewing with me.
Of course.
So, this is mostly going to be focused on you as an individual, and I wanted to ask you, what is there a story behind your name? And if there is, could you tell us it?
Well, my parents came to New York in the 70s, and in the 70s, Lisa was a very common English name. So that's my name, because my parents don't speak English. They're like, okay, cool, this is a common name. It's your name now. So that's it.
How do you feel knowing that they English, like, it was a decision between a name that is not a Chinese name versus a name that other people could pronounce?
I mean, I do know a Chinese name. In Cantonese, it's Yingling too, so it's like my surname and like the character for swim, and then the character for like go past, and I can like write it out for you later. But basically, I have that name because my dad and his brother, all of their kids have the word for pass in their Chinese name. And I was the last one out of all of them, so I have three cousins who are much older than I am, like in their 40s, and I have an older brother, and then there's me, and we all have like the same surname and the same like last character of our names, which means to surpass, and then we all have a different like part in the middle. So mine is like, the ideology behind my name is that like I'd be able to like easily like move past any like difficulties or whatever. So that's the meaning behind my Chinese name. But like I think my parents wanted me to have an English name just so it would be easier for people to like interact with me or whatever. But my Chinese name is my middle name. So yeah.
Going on to this theme of other people, what does being an American mean to you? How would you define it, and how do you see that fitting into society's perception of what Americans are?
I mean, this is a question that I've been thinking about for a long time, right? Because the concept of what it means to be an American is, first of all, social construct, so it means something different to everyone involved. But to me, I guess what being an American is, that's a really good question. I don't know, actually, because I was working in Times Square earlier today, not earlier today, sorry, this was a couple of days ago, and there was this person who was from China, and he and I were talking, and he asked me the question, what do you think freedom is? And I was like, what? And because this is a really crazy question to be asking me, because I'm like working in front of a golden box, oh my god, so bright, in Times Square. And then he asked me, what do you think freedom is? And I'm like, thinking about, and I was like, damn, that's a hard ass question. Also because he was speaking to me in Chinese, and I was like, I don't know how to answer that question in Chinese. So I replied to him, and I was like, I think freedom means the ability to be whoever you want to be. And then we had a long discussion about like, he was like, I think freedom means having the ability to say no, because he comes from China, right? And I think down to the very core, there's this concept of like the idea of like freedom in like America, what it means to be like free, like, and that's something that I think is what it means to be quote an American, because also that means something different for everyone. And what does it mean to be like truly free, like free from having a life free of like free from capitalism, free from racism, and all the isms in the world? Like, what does that even mean, right? So I don't know what it means to be American, and I don't think anyone does know, and I think we're all trying to figure it out together. But there are people who have more say in what it means to be, quote, an American. But to me personally, I don't really believe in the concept of nationalism. So I don't think I can say I know what it means to be an American. That was a really long-winded answer.
It was a good answer. I'm gonna stop it and see if going off a similar tangent. What do you think being Asian American means, and what does it mean to you specifically?
I don't know, dude.
You need to think about your answer.
Okay. Well, to be Asian American down to the very core means that you're never truly an American because of the hyphen, right? Because you're Asian but also American, not just American, right? Like we don't say German Americans, we don't say Jewish Americans, we say Asian American, African American, Latinx American, what have you, right? So to be an Asian American means always living on the fringes, just because of the way we construct the identity of American, right? I think, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be Asian American because growing up, I went to Shaolin school on the Lower East Side and it was a bilingual school, so we spoke English from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then we had Chinese class, Mandarin class from 3 to 5 p.m. every day, Monday to Friday. So it was like, not only did we learn the language of Mandarin, we also learned like Chinese cultural things, right? So I didn't know that there were people who, I didn't know that there were, okay, I thought every single American could speak a second language up until I was 15. And when I got to the like orchestra for the first time, I was talking to, I remember I was talking to my stand partner, and she was like some sort of white, I had no idea what she was. And I was like, what language do you speak at home? And she was like, English. And I was like, no, but what other language do you speak at home? She's like, no, I just speak English. And I was like, what? I just like didn't understand. I was just really confused because I thought everyone spoke a second language up until that. I was like, what? So that like really just like blew my mind, right? So when I used to think that being Asian American meant like being super immersed in your Asian culture, but also being super immersed in American culture. But now as I'm growing up, I realize that not every Asian is fortunate enough to like learn to know how to speak their native tongue. So I think being Asian American is whatever you want it to be, right? So like, I guess to me, other than like Asian American being something that's like othering, I think it's also just like being able to live in between two distinct cultures is something that I really need. Yeah, so I think being amazing, I don't know, I feel like the best way to the best thing, well, the most accurate portrayal of like Asian American, what Asian American means to me is being in a Chinatown eating like Hong Kongese food, like so like right now pretty much, right? So like being in a Chinatown in the US eating like Asian food and having conversations with people where I can switch between languages, right? Like but that's just because to me language is still very important because I speak 3 Chinese dialects and I speak Khoisan pretty fluently. So whenever I meet older folks who speak Khoisan, they're always really surprised to hear like a juksing, like which means like young babushtu, speak Khoisan so fluently. And I was like, yeah, because my parents don't speak English, so they taught it to me, and that's why I speak at home with their tongue. They're like, wow, because we don't really meet very many like Khoisan people who are my age who can speak that fluently. Because mostly their parents teach them Cantonese or Mandarin, because those are most like common, they're more useful, quote unquote useful, in terms of like making money or communication outside of your like hometown language. So yeah, so I don't know, I think just I don't know, I'm used to living like in between like communities, just because like, you know, the US is like majority, the white hegemony of whiteness is the norm, right? In the US, I grew up in Chinatown, but I also grew up in majority black community, so like I'm very used to just like living on the fringes, and I think I've like thrived in that. So yeah.
I'm so sorry, but you mentioned in orchestra you were near a stand partner. I couldn't hear it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I have no idea.
Oh no, so she sat next to me. So she and I shared a music stand.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned talking a lot about living in the fringes. How do you feel that has affected you? Do you think that because of that you've been hindered, or that it's given you a specific type of perspective you wouldn't have gotten otherwise?
I think I'm happy living in the fringes. Honestly, like, it's where it is. It's where it's at. I think it's given me a really unique perspective on life. Just because I haven't met very many Asian Americans who have such a strong cultural tie to their native tongue and who live in a majority black community, right? And who have had, honestly, from my life, from like the start of my life to now, I've had very little interaction with white people, which is very, very, very unusual in the US, right? So I think that gives me a really unique perspective on like race and class, right? Especially because I do live in public housing. But I do think it gives me a really unique perspective because a lot of people I do meet don't come from the same background as I do, right? So whenever I like bring something up, they're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, you never thought about it that way because you never had to think about it that way. But then sometimes it's like, I think just like living on the fringes has made me more able to think on my feet more, which is a lot more like, which is, I guess, not useful, but like it helps me survive day to day, right? But I think I prefer it. I honestly don't like a lot of like personal attention. Like I prefer one-on-ones. I don't do groups well. So I think it's, I don't know, I think I appreciate it, and there's so much power to be had in the fringes, and in the marginalized, and I think I do well there because I believe that everyone has I believe that everyone has whatever they need or want in them, and it just takes someone to sort of help them find it, right? And I'm really lucky that I get to be that person to help them find what it is they want to be or want to do. And I can't do that if I'm not like living in the marginalized communities, right? And I can't do that if I'm not from there, right? So like, I think I'm really fortunate to have been able to grow up with such in such an interesting intersection of marginality. Is that a word? Marginalization. Yeah. Marginalization. Yes. Just because it's given me a unique perspective on the way that I see life, and I can help a lot of people figure out what it is that they need at that moment. Yeah.
So, speaking of fringes, you say that you live kind of on the fringe of what exactly? Like, why would you call where you live the fringe as opposed to the center and other people living in the fringe? And who do you think it is that defines the fringe versus the core that you're on the fringe of?
Oh. Good question. So, I live in public housing, right? And folks who have lived in public housing have always been on the edge of the fringe because those who live in public housing are deemed as unworthy or second-class citizens because really powerful folks. Because really powerful folks are the ones that want to push them out and therefore pushing them to the fringes, right? So who defines like what is in the center? It's just really, it's really who has the power, right? And how did they get that power? So as of now in the U.S., folks who have the power are white cis men who think they can get away with everything, right? Just because the way this country was constructed, right? So those are people who decide what the center of the world is, right? Is there a saying that like, what's that thing that there's something about like how Wall Street is like the center of the universe and how like successful stockbrokers call themselves masters of the universe?
I didn't know that.
So something along those lines of how like they think they are the center, and in many ways they are the center because they control the capital, and because we live in a capitalist system, those people are the center, right? So anyone who's not them is at a different degree of marginality, right? And as a feminine identifying Chinese person who lives in public housing, I'm at the intersection of very many marginalized identities, right? Yeah. So I think that's what it is.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
So you talked about power in the fringes. Where do you see this power coming from, and how is this power a unique type of power? And how do you think other people, maybe in the fringes or maybe in another group in society, can channel this power?
Damn, now we're getting deep into capitalism talk. Holy shit. Okay.
My favorite.
Wait, ask your first question again.
Sorry?
What's your first question?
So you mentioned power in the fringes. Where do you see this power deriving? Who do you think it affects, and how is this a unique type of power? And how do you see this power being activated in other people, and what is your role in it?
I'm like holding this. Are you done? Okay. Because I'm like holding this pose for a long time because I'm like, I never even shit me, so I don't want to be, okay. I think power just means just feeling like you're invincible or thinking that you are invincible. And most of the time, feeling and thinking that you are invincible often means that you are. Just because of the way that systems of oppression are set up in this world, in this universe that we live in. And because of the way our society is constructed and built, certain people have more power than others. Oh my god, that's so cute. Holy crap. Oh my god. Sorry. Yeah, I was like, sorry, anyways.
So embarrassing.
Yeah, it's so cute. Oh my god. Okay, anyways. So power means everyone has power within them, right? I believe everyone has all the power that they need within them, but various systems of oppression, various aspects of society tell you that you're not worthy, right? And that's how people take power away from each other, like telling them that they're not worthy, right? Which is why I think like anti-racism, anti-sexism, like class work is so important, is because that's how we build power amongst marginalized communities, that we tell them they are important, that they do have power, regardless of how these power structures are set up for them to fail, right? So I feel like a lot of it comes from power, it's based internally, but also how the internal is influenced by the external, right? So it's like, if you grow up believing you are powerful if you grow up believing you're invincible and powerful, and the systems that you grew up in make you believe you're powerful and invincible, you're only going to get more powerful and more invincible because you believe you are so, if that makes sense. So it's like a positive feedback cycle, right? At the same time, right, like, if you are someone who is deemed worthless, you are either deemed as powerless or dangerous, right? And okay, I'm thinking. Intensive. Okay. I think, I don't know if my answers are making sense, but it's kind of like, okay, well, that's really bright. Yeah. But like, no, it's okay. Like, yeah, but like I said before, I do believe that everyone has the power. Everyone has everything they need to survive within them. It just takes different situations, different people, different experiences to coax it out, if that makes sense, right? So yeah, and power in the fringes, and they're in the fringes. People are in the fringes because they're not. because they're not seen as. That's so bright. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Yay. So people are in the fringes because they don't have power, because those in power are like, hey, you're not worthy. Hey, I can oppress you to get more power, right? Blah, blah, whatever. Yeah, I kind of lost track of the question, so I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
No, you did answer my question.
But I feel like, basically, short answer, everyone has the power they need within them to do all that they want to do and all that they need to do, but various systems and social constructs tell us that we are not powerful enough, right? And you can find, I always believe people can find power in themselves and power in community, however you define those words, but also to realize that even if you on a societal scale are powerless, it is still you still can actively marginalize people, if that makes sense. So even if you are the most quote oppressed, even if you are at the intersection of all the oppressed identities, you can still exhibit oppressive behaviors to other people. So it's like something to acknowledge when you're thinking about how you fit in a societal context and also how you fit in a community context. So if that makes sense. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, no, it does answer the question.
Okay.
I guess to summarize, you believe that people in the fringes have power, and again, it comes to community action and finding it within themselves. And I guess to bring it back to your idea of the fringes, you mentioned living in this in between two bubbles or two worlds. I think a lot of people tend to think of Chinatown as the fringe or between two worlds again, you know, like between the Asian American community and what most people call the American community. How do you see the fringe identity affecting and defining Chinatown?
Defining what?
Defining Chinatown. How do you correlate fringe with Chinatown?
I mean, Chinatown only existed because they were not allowed to. Chinese people were not allowed to live anywhere else, right? And that's the same for Chinatowns all over the world. So Chinatown is born of this idea, from this idea of marginality, right? And we thrive from it, right? We've thrived historically for the past several hundred years, both before the Asian Exclusion Act and after, right? So in its way, Chinatown took something that was bad and made it its own, right? I think Chinatown is really unique because it's like neighborhoods like Chinatown, Washington Heights, Bushwick, all these neighborhoods, they're always really unique to me because they're bilingual neighborhoods, right? And like, I think language has always been really important to me and continues to be important to me. So I think people are able to take a bad thing and try to make it their own, right? So like, something that I think about a lot is that when I was in Seattle, I attended this talk by this scholar named Marie Wong, and she's writing a book about SROs in Seattle. And so SROs are single room occupancies in Seattle.
Could you repeat that?
SROs are stand for single room occupancies. So they're like places where people live that are kind of like run down, whatever. And she was saying that Seattle has a really international history in terms of like laborers coming through from like the Philippines, from China, where have you, whatever. And Chinatown basically existed in Seattle because they couldn't live anywhere else, right? And at a time where it was illegal for Chinese people to own property, Chinese people own property in Seattle because what they did was a group of men formed a corporation and then they would buy the land via the corporation. So technically the corporation, the LLC, owned the land, but the corporation was formed by a bunch of Chinese people. So it was a loophole around the law of saying that Chinese men couldn't own property, or no, around the law that you couldn't own property if you weren't a citizen, right? So I think about that a lot because at that time, Chinese folks were not granted residency, which means that they were not ever going to be part of, quote, America, which means that they're always going to be marginalized. But these marginalized folks were able to, like, work around the law to make something that's theirs, you know? So I think, yeah. I don't know.
I was doing some research for my term paper and I came up on a bunch of sources about how people didn't live in Chinatown because they couldn't live anywhere else and white landowners wouldn't rent them. And they just set up little mine camps that eventually was named Chinatown by the media and picked up, and eventually people started living there because where else could they go?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's back to the concept of thriving in the fringe again. Chinatown. Coming back to this again, who do you think Chinatown is for? And this doesn't have to be one set answer. Okay. Historically, it could be different answers, and you can explore that spectrum too.
That is a question that's been complicated now that China is a huge player in the global economy, right? Historically, Chinatown has been for Chinese immigrants, and Chinese immigrants leave China because to escape famine, war, what have you, right? Famine, war, violence, what have you. But now, a lot of the folks coming out of China are still escaping for those reasons, but you have those folks coming from the big cities in China, right? So, and it's this really interesting dynamic now that China is it's a global power. The perception of Chinese folks has changed, which means that perceptions of Chinatown are changing. Because when you look at Chinatown, it's not just being gentrified by like your typical real estate companies run by white people. It's also being gentrified by Chinese capital, right? So I would say that Chinatown is for Chinese people, but I think now I'd add on to say Chinatown is for Chinese people who don't have anywhere else to be, or don't have anywhere else they feel like they can call home safely anymore, right? So Chinatown becomes their home. Yeah, I don't know. It's really challenging to think about that now. There's always was a dynamic in terms of wealth. Even in Chinatown's foundation, you always have the wealthier folks who can bring their children over, and their wives over, and that was the hierarchy, was whether or not you had children. So it's not definitive to say that Chinatown's for one specific group, but if you can you tell us about Chinatown's significance, and it could be to you specifically, or to in general, or both? I think for me, Chinatown was always this place where I could exercise my Chinese identity. Because it's such a big part of who I am. Like when it comes down to it, right? Like I speak 3 Chinese dialects. I've said multiple times, and I think there are just parts of my brain that are activated when I speak Chinese that I need to be able to exercise. Otherwise, I feel like part of me is dying. You know, pretty dramatic, but yeah. I think Chinatown's really interesting. Like New York China is really interesting because you have all different generations of Chinese people coming in. So like you got like your older immigrant like folks, you got like your Asian Americans, you got your 1.5 gen people, you know. So to me, Chinatown is always a place where I know I can always call home. Also, it helps that a lot of Chinatowns in the Americas were started by people from Khoisan, and like wherever I go, I can hear my mother tongue in literally every single Chinatown that I go step into, right? Or most Chinatowns I step into. But to me personally, Chinatown's a place where I can buy food. Honestly, right? 'Cause like I always miss like Asian food when I don't eat food for a long time. Like I feel more comfortable using chopsticks than like a knife and fork, right? So like I said, for me personally, it's just a place for me to like exercise my Chinese identity. Just because it was so important to me growing up and it still is. I guess. Wait, did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, the answer should be what you think answers the question.
Okay.
Because they're very broad, and I think as long as you apply to yourself. And in addition to the significance, do you feel like the significance has changed over time for you as you become older, or as political situations change, or as you mentioned, more wealthy people come in and buy parts of Chinatown? Or to other people, do you feel like the significance of Chinatown might have changed to other people or yourself?
I mean, I think the significance of things change all the time, right? Like as we develop new memories, things change. So something that's important to me, something that was a place or a thing that was important to me then might not be as important to me now, but it's still important to me because it was important to me then, if that makes sense, right? It helped form whatever part of my identity. So I grew up going to school in Chinatown, so to me Chinatown will always be where I grew up, right? It's where I became who I am. But after I went to high school and college, I started spending less time in Chinatown, getting really busy, and I think a part of me really missed that. Like really missed being all of me at once, right? So I think one of my big things, something that's really important to me, is like having friends who are able to speak having friends who are able to communicate in another language with me other than English, because I realized that there are some thoughts that I don't know how to like put in English, and I'm also really bad at translating. So for me, Chinatown has always been a place where I can be my entire self, right? Where I can easily switch between languages and have people understand me, you know? And I don't want to say I'm like not allowed to be myself outside, like all of me outside, but I think because of how segregated our societies are and our ethnic enclaves are, my identities are also similarly segregated, right? So I feel like Chinatown has always been a place where I could be all of me, just because I can practice all of my languages, habits, what have you, right? So its significance has changed because I always assumed that it would be there, but then after some time apart and after spending several years like not consistently going to Chinatown, I'm like, damn, there's a really big part of me that I'm missing when I'm not like in Chinatown, if that makes sense. So,
I seem so blank.
No.
Just absorbing as we go. Can you name your generation in Chinatown and your generation in America?
My parents moved here, so I don't know what that makes me. I don't know.
I guess everybody defines first generation differently. For some people, it's if you're the first in your family to be here generation-wise, or if you and your family came here together, you've never been here before, so you're first generation.
Oh, okay. I think those are called 1.5 gen. Like people, okay, I know people who come here, like, and this isn't home country, they're 1.5 gen. So I think I'm second gen. I don't know, whatever. My parents moved here, so that's that. So my parents moved here in the 70s, and I was born here, so yeah.
Wait, what's your generation in Chinatown?
Oh.
Generations?
Well, my parents used to live in Chinatown, and then we moved to public housing. So, and I went to school in I went to school in Chinatown, so I was here every day I was here 5 days a week, and not more, for ages 4 to 14. So I guess that makes me kind of second gen Chinatown growing up ish. I don't know that.
Yeah, generations are defined by people themselves anyway.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, you could be a 0th generation Chinatown.
I guess. I don't know.
Also, if you don't know the answer, you don't want to answer, you can just be like, next question.
Okay.
I don't want to force you.
Okay.
So, branching off a little bit, what is something about Chinatown you wish other people knew?
That it's safe. I mean, I don't know, people just always come to Chinatown to gawk at things. And I'm like, well, there are people who live here, so it's like, you know, and I think it's just like, I think that's pretty much, I mean, Chinatown is Chinatown, right? People are always busy, but that doesn't mean they're not friendly, if that makes sense, right? And just because you know, things are not like super the way you want it to be, doesn't mean that it's subpar in any way. It's just different. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Going off that tangent, is there a moment in Chinatown, a story of you in Chinatown that you want to tell others? For me, it was when some lady started telling me I was sweeping, about us sweeping, and that, like, in Chinatown, the Beautification Day, I think that just kind of changed what I thought about Chinatown. Is there anything a story that you have that you think is important to tell others about Chinatown?
There are a lot of stories, but oh my god, okay, so I was with my friends and we were doing this like 24-hour challenge thing where we had to complete as many challenges as we could in 24 hours. And one of them was to do do something basketball related in Sarah D. Roosevelt Park, which is a park that's right by Grand Street. And when we were there, we saw all these like old aunties and uncles dancing to like Chinese music, like doing ballroom dancing, right? And then we choreographed a really quick thing and we like joined them, and it was just like really fun to like do that at night with all these aunties and uncles. Also because all my friends are of Asian descent as well, so it was just like really funny to like do that with them together, you know. And I think it's something that is really that I'll think about a lot when I think about my relationship with Chinatown now. That's something I think about a lot. But I think also as a kid, I'm trying to think. There's a lot, like, I spent a lot of time at my uncle's barber shop on Doyer Street. So there's that. On Doyer Street. I don't know. I just remember hanging out in Columbus Park a lot. I don't really know. And
Such a bad name.
I know, dude. But that's what they called it. And after school, I would walk to North Dumpling with my friends. North Dumpling is on Essex Street. It's like on the edge of Chinatown, and we would just get dumplings together after school. So that's always really nice. But yeah,
Chinatown has a very special place in your heart.
Yeah.
Additionally, what is a problem about Chinatown? I can pause if you want to respond.
Yeah.
What is a problem that you see in Chinatown, or I guess in really any community that you wish other people knew about or you are very passionate about?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of infighting in Chinatown. I feel like there's a lot of infighting in Chinatown, just between the people of different Chinese ethnicities and like different community organizations. That's pretty much all I guess I can say about that, because I don't want to get into it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
what does being a second, or whatever you call yourself, generation mean to you? And how do you think it's shaped your perception of not only yourself, but of your life and your role in society?
I don't know. I think it's also another like sort of fringe identity, quote unquote, because like I'm like not, because I'm like technically, no, it's okay. I'm like technically not a like, no, it's okay. I'm like technically not like a quote like real Chinese person, if that makes sense. Not in like that way, right? But it's like another sort of fringe identity because I'm neither Chinese, fully Chinese, nor neither American, right? So that's what because I'm like one separated away from my culture, or whatever that is, and I will never be seen as American because of like I said, the construct of America, right? So that in its way gives me its own sense of marginality, which in itself is like, it's fine. But I think because I have so many other like Asian American, Chinese American friends, it's like not a big deal. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get your neck.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah.
What is? Okay. What is your thoughts on the perception of Chinatown in the media, specifically when we talk about movies being filmed here, or any real reporting in terms of language used? How do you think that's affected the community movements? How when people come to Chinatown, like immigrants, when they come here, they live here, how do you think it's shaped their idea of what Chinatown is? And even your perception of how Chinatown is?
I mean, Chinatown was always seen as this exotic place, regardless of what source it comes from. If you're not Chinese American, or if you're not Chinese, Chinatown and Chinese things will always be exotic, right? And that's kind of annoying, honestly, because then you get people who are like gawking at you and like being like, and trying to make you feel like an outsider in your own community, right? Yeah, I don't know. And like, it's just like also like Chinatown's either seen as like dirty place or a place where all the gangs run amok, so it's like
opium dens.
Yeah, just things like that, and I'm like, yeah.
I know tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything you wish you could tell those people if they were listening right now?
This is home, this is where I became who I am. This is where people become who they are. This is where people form their identities, form their memories, their stories, what have you. Yeah.
How do you think Chinatown is different? And you can define Chinatown how you will. If you could just explicate what you define Chinatown is, because we call Canal Street Chinatown, but there are other Chinese communities and East Asian communities around the city. What do you think makes Chinatown unique and draws people here? And what do you think makes all, East Asian and Asian communities different, if you want to expand your definition of what Chinatown is?
That's really interesting because with the growth of like Chinese suburbs, does that count as Chinatown? I don't know, right? I don't think they would because suburbs are... I just don't like suburbia. Okay, so anything related to suburbs is like, that's not real, okay? In my opinion. Sorry, that's like, I know those are fighting words, but that's my opinion, I'm sticking by it. I think anywhere where Chinese folks are able to live, get their work, buy food they need, do their day-to-day activities in a safe and comfortable place, that can be counted as a Chinatown, right? Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Because there's so many Chinatowns. There's like Flushing Chinatown, there's Brooklyn, Sunset Park, there's a Chinatown, so,
There are a lot of Chinatowns throughout the city.
Yeah.
Sorry. How do you see where do you see Chinatown heading for in the future? Where do you see Chinatown heading for in the future?
That's a really good question. Because I see the growth of all these like Asian American businesses, or businesses started by like Asian American folks. But the thing is, these businesses aren't catered towards the existing Chinatown communities, which is kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm like, oh, I'm glad that you're like, you know, starting your own business in a place that you think is home, but then the folks you're catering to are not going to be the folks who made you who you are, right? Because like, the folks who like, would your mom spend $8 on ice cream? Probably not. That's the thing, right? So yeah, I'm just like being honest. So I don't know if Chinatown's gonna become like a playground for like second gen Chinese Americans, which is fine, or if it's gonna be like, do you want me to stop here so I take a picture of my hand, or I don't know if like it's gonna be like this, or I don't know if okay. So actually three things that I think Chinatown could be: a place for Chinese Americans to hang out with their friends, and it just be that. A place gentrified by Chinese capital, so only for Chinese people, or it continues to be a place for Chinese immigrants of all generations that like to hang out. So those are three options that Chinatown could end up being, and I have no idea where it's gonna go.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an unsteady path, because we traditionally think of Chinatown as a home for elderly, but now we're seeing a regeneration of Chinatown with the younger generation kind of moving back, you know, after going away for college or a couple years for a job. They come back and they start businesses, they start their lives. And how do you see this regeneration impacting Chinatown? And maybe do you maybe want to partake in this regeneration? How does it affect you? And the perception of Asian Americans in general, like as young professionals entering the workforce?
I think it's also just like, it's different, you know, because if your business isn't a place where your parents would frequent, then yes, you are changing Chinatown to be something else. That's it when it comes down to it, right? I think that's what I think about that. Like, even if you say you're not gentrifying Chinatown, but if your business is not a business that your parents would go to, then yes, you are gentrifying Chinatown. Doesn't matter what you say, okay? Doesn't matter who you are, it is what it is, right? I'm just being real here. But I do think that if you open a business and it is inclusive of all language ability, financial, a range of, if it's inclusive of like language ability, financial paying ability, I know that's kind of a weird way to say it, financial status, whatever. Like, if your business is one of those places, then you are building a new Chinatown instead of creating a new one, if that makes sense. Like, you are building, that doesn't make sense. You are contributing.
Yeah, contributing, I think.
Contributing makes more sense, right? So I think it just depends on what they're doing and like how they're thinking about how they're including the older generation in their ideas. Because if they're not, then they're gentrifying Chinatown. So that's that. I don't know, because I haven't really. I mean, I did spend a lot of time in Chinatown, but I've been spending less time in Chinatown just because I'm so busy now. So I don't know how I'd like. I don't know. You know. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what my role in Chinatown is, to be honest. I know that this will be a place where I can buy my food and hang out with my friends, but since I don't live here and nor do I go to school here anymore, I don't know what my explicit role in this place is.
You don't work here, right?
Huh?
You don't work in Chinatown? Okay. Just clarifying, but this, I think, transports us back to what you said in the beginning about. I guess this brings us back to an earlier question when we talked about who Chinatown is for, and you mentioned like a bunch of new wealth coming in. new business structure that's shaping Chinatown and how this affects and displaces current people.
Yeah.
Right? But how do you think that this idea of the young Asian American professional business owner is shaping America or like other people's perception of Asian Americans and Asian Americans in Chinatown when they come back, as opposed to going to the suburbs, which is part of the quote-unquote American dream?
I think those folks who are doing that are taking something their unique other perspective on life and the way life is in America, and making it their own and like capitalizing off it, right? Which is like, if because we live in system capitalism, that's good for them that they're doing that, right? Because they're creating something that helps them survive, right? And they enjoy it. So who am I to be like, no, don't do that, blah blah, what have you, right? So there's something really admirable in like coming back to your neighborhood and being like, look, I made it. But then at the same time, it's like, I think a lot of folks don't realize the consequences that they might have in the neighborhood. Yeah, so it's like kind of hard to say. Like on one hand, I really do admire the fact that they are making it for themselves, but at the same time, there are always things that people can do more that they might not be doing. So yeah.
Would you like to leave a message for them, or have you said all you needed to?
I would like to congratulate them on their success, but also at the same time realize that, hey, there's still a lot of people here. And I'm not saying, make everything on your menu super cheap, but I'm saying that maybe you could have like an option for a cheaper thing. Like maybe you could have like something that's like $1 instead of $8, you know what I mean?
Like a senior citizens discount?
Yeah, or just like a small thing for like cheaper.
I see what you're saying.
So like make it truly like accessible or whatever. And have your stuff be in Chinese, like you're in Chinatown, so I think those are two concrete steps that Chinese American owned businesses can do to ensure that they're not helping to bring in wealth that won't benefit the community that already exists there.
I think this highlights this interesting contrast or duality, really, of Chinatown in terms of exclusion and exclusion, and how traditionally we see Chinatown as very insular, right? And we see it as inclusive of the Asian community, but exclusive of people who are non-Asian. But as we progress, we start to see that maybe these lines aren't so defined. There's very clear, almost not even blurring, but intersections of exclusion of Chinese Americans in Chinatown, and more inclusion of white Americans or other people who might not have always traditionally been associated with Chinatown when they come for tourism or to buy things. I think that's a very good, interesting point that you've highlighted. Going back to...
You're good.
Yeah, oh yeah, language, that's what it was. So you mentioned that you wish that people took consideration into language and like how they have signs in Chinese. How do you think language has shaped Chinatown? And you mentioned it shapes you a lot, and how you can talk about that too in your answer.
I mean, Chinatown wouldn't be Chinatown without Chinese, right? So I think that's how Chinatown has remained itself, right? But it's also divides Chinatown because like you have the Cantonese speakers and Fujianese speakers, and that's also like another thing. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Chinese defines Chinatown, like the language defines Chinatown, but it can also divide it based on, infighting between Chinese residents, right? I don't know.
Let me check the time. Okay. Are you okay on the time?
Yeah, I think I'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your NISAC work and your general work with the public in Chinatown or Chinese AAPI community?
Okay. Oh my God, this is gonna be a long list. Okay, so I'll start from the beginning. I started at the Asian American Writers Workshop in 2014. Yes, I was an author events intern there for an entire year. So that means I help put together events, like run events, logistics, what have you, like when authors come and talk, blah, 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 blah. So that's really where I learned how to do event stuff. And really where I found a home in Asian Americana, like in the hyphen, right? Who was it? It was Toni Morrison who was like something about the hyphen and blah, blah, American, I don't know, whatever, anyways.
Oh, this was in the one with Milkman, I think?
Was it Toni Morrison?
Yeah, Song of Solomon?
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
I don't know, something about
Solomon.
the hyphen thing, and it was the first place where I really felt comfortable there, because like before that, I was either super Asian or super American. Asian American was kind of a thing that didn't really exist in my life, right? Yeah, so that was that. So I think at the Asian American Writers Workshop was the first place where I was like, shit, I can be truly Asian and Asian. I can be truly Asian American instead of Asian and American, if that makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
see what you're saying.
Yeah, and it was also where I learned to run events. And from there, I was inspired to become involved at NISAC, which is the New York City Asian American Conference, in 2014, because I was like, shit, look at all these like writers and writers of color being like political just by writing, right? So like I was always like I just really like shied away from politics and all that, because I was like, I don't want to cause trouble, whatever. But at the Asian American Writers Workshop, I saw that my mere existence as a non-white person is already inherently political. So I was like, damn, I gotta get myself educated. So then I started reading a lot, and then I became part of a member of the workshops committee at NISAC in 2014. I was also I returned as in 2015, and in 2016 I became director of the entire conference, and I'm director now of NISAC. And
humble brag.
yeah, and yeah. This is my friend Chester. So she's interviewing me. Come sit. She's like interviewing me for this like Humans of Chinatown thing. So I'm like telling my life story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's selective.
No, sit.
No,
you can
listen
just
in.
This is like
you're
kind
gonna make her answers better. They're
yeah,
finally gonna be good.
Yeah. So yeah. So I was telling her about like NISAC and how I started the Asian American Writers Workshop. Yeah, I worked there for a whole year. Yeah. So she was like, tell me about Asian American stuff. I'm like, dude, my resume is all Asian American shit.
That's what you want to see.
So I started at AEW and then NISAC, and after NISAC, last summer I interned at the Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C., and I was placed there through APACS, which is the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies, which you should do next year, by the way, if you're like, it's really cool. So basically their org is all about like Asian American political representation, right? And then I was like, oh, DC sucks, whatever. But then it was also just like really inspiring to see like Asian American like representatives doing good work. Like they're trying to fix the system from within, and they actually truly are, right? It's really inspiring to see that. So yeah, APACS. And then from there I was like, maybe I should really get involved in like community organizations, because I've seen things from the policy end, right? From APACS. And then I was like, I think this summer I was like, it's time for me to come back home in terms of my work. So I applied to Seed to Change Fellowship, and Seed to Change is a Asian American movement building fellowship thing. I don't know how they market it. It's something about like, you get placed at a community organization to do work there, and I was placed at CAV.
That's cool.
So I worked at CAV this year, and that was a really interesting experience for me, because it was like going home to do work. It's like always really challenging, right? And NISAC is, a big part of who I am, and that's me and Asian Americana. That's literally been the past 3-4 years of my entire life, like everything Asian American.
3 minutes.
So yeah.
Yeah. How did you really get into the Asian Americans Writers Workshop?
Oh, I have no idea. I was like, I want an internship, and they're like, okay. But that's how I got the internship.
Did you ever partake in it? Like, I know a bunch of my friends do it.
I used to write. but I don't have time to do that anymore. So, like short stories and shit, but not for a while. I've been really busy.
Oh yeah, how did you see power in writing? You spoke about language, and I see
I
writing
think
is
just telling your story. Just telling your story is already inherently powerful because if your mere existence is like not supposed to, if you're not supposed to exist, or if your story doesn't fit the mainstream narrative of what it means to be Asian or whatever, that already in itself is inherently powerful because it disrupts existing power structures. So yeah.
You're really close to 6 o'clock, so thank you so much for speaking with me.
Yes.